this is the kind of thing that is important for any person going into a hostile environment. And I'm just going to tell you that the university, almost without exception, and I'm including Christian universities here, are going to be a hostile environment if you take Jesus seriously, if you take Scripture seriously. If you are a genuine follower of Christ, you're going to get pushback, and you need to be trained for that. That is actually the last of my 3 points that I was going to make to college-bound students. But let me make an observation about how people learn and believe that I think is important. There is a process called socialization, which means how one is influenced and taught and instructed, often in very subtle ways, by their community that they're in, the culture that's around them. And there are various layers of culture. If you're a follower of Christ, if you're a Christian, you have your Christian culture. Then you have your friends and school that you might go to. That's another layer. You might just the general Western American civilization culture is reflected by the media and movies and things like that. So there's a lot of layers here. But one of the hardest things, it turns out, is when followers of Christ, churchgoers, maybe is the best way to characterize them at this point, change groups and go then to an environment where all of their points of view theologically are not supported by other Christians around them, but it's just exactly the opposite. They're the odd person out. And where you've held your own convictions for, largely emotional reasons. I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying we are influenced subjectively by the opinions of others that we're around, and so we kind of go with the flow. When we get into a new environment, the temptation is very, very strong to go with the new flow. And if someone doesn't have very good reasons to stick with Jesus, they are going to hear what will sound like very good reasons to switch allegiances. Plus, there's a payoff, and the payoff is in the moral arena. That is, the social sensibilities of the average university environment are very different from the church. You believe something different, but you get to behave differently too. The kinds of restrictions that you experienced as a member of the Christian group are largely lifted. And mom and dad aren't looking over your shoulder, and your youth group leader's not looking over your shoulder, and it becomes very, very difficult. Let's say the other side's point of view starts looking very attractive when you consider what's at stake. And so I just want you to be aware of that dynamic. If you are going off to college, if you have children that are going off to college, if you have grandchildren that are going off to college, be forewarned. That social group wants to change your mind. They are evangelizing and they are discipling, and they are doing it aggressively. And there's going to be a lot of tantalizing carrots that are dangled in front of you, that aren't just dangled. They are there for the taking. They are within reach. And it's going to be very hard to resist the social pressure and the appeal of the carrot if you are not fully convinced that Jesus is who he claimed to be, and that the world is actually structured the way the Bible describes. And so my recommendation to you, as you're going off, and if you feel convinced that Jesus is true and Christianity is true, if all you have is a feeling, you're in for a rough ride. If you are going from a group where it supported you to a group that does not support you, and for worse than that, will directly oppose you and vilify you. Is that the right word? Make you like a villain? Is that vilify? you for the views that you have and call you names and characterize you as the person who's on the low moral road, not the high moral road like they are. Unless you're convinced, it's easy to fall into. And then, you start dating and you realize the rules are different than with your youth group, and just temptation can be overwhelming.